Imagine waking up at 3 a.m., drenched in sweat, your heart pounding so hard you think it might break through your chest. That was me, not long ago, staring into the dark, gripped by a fear I couldn't name. It wasn't a nightmare that jolted me awake. It was a question, one that hit me like a thunderbolt. What if death takes everything and there's nothing left? I'm not talking about some abstract debate over coffee. This was raw, personal, and it started the night my grandmother slipped away. She was my anchor, the one who taught me how to laugh through tears, and suddenly she was gone. Poof, just like that. And there I was, 28 years old, lying in bed, wondering if that's all there is. A flicker of life, then darkness forever. I know what you're thinking. Death? Really? Can't we talk about something lighter? But stick with me here, because this isn't just my story. It might be yours too. We live in a world that's always buzzing, phones pinging, deadlines looming, everyone chasing the next big thing. Yet underneath it all, there's this quiet panic, isn't there? The stress of keeping up, the fear of losing what matters, the gnawing worry that maybe none of it means anything. That night, I felt it all at once. I'd spent years building a life I thought made sense. Decent job, friends, a playlist for every mood. But losing her cracked it wide open. If she could vanish, what was holding me together? What was the point of all this running around if it ends in nothing? I tried to shake it off. Got out of bed, splashed water on my face, paced the apartment like a caged animal. But that question wouldn't let go. What if death isn't just an end, but a lie we've all bought into? I mean, we're told to live like tomorrow's promised, but what if tomorrow's not the problem? What if it's the after that we're missing? My grandmother used to say, "Life's a mystery, kid, not a math problem." I'd laugh it off back then, but now, alone in the dark, I wasn't so sure. Maybe she knew something I didn't. Maybe there was more to this than the cold, hard stop I was terrified of. So I did what any restless, lost soul might do. I reached for answers. Not in the usual places, though. No late night scrolling through self-help blogs or texting friends for a pep talk. Those felt too small, too flimsy. Instead, I grabbed a book off my shelf, one I'd bought on a whim and never opened. A collection of Buddhist sayings. I wasn't religious, still aren't, but I flipped it open anyway, half expecting some flowery nonsense. What I found stopped me cold. All things are impermanent, it said. They arise and they pass away. Simple, right? But to me, it was a punch in the gut. If everything passes, what was left of her? What was left of me? I tossed the book aside, frustrated, but those words stuck like glue. Impermanent. Passing. Was that all we were? Just dust blowing through time? I couldn't sit with that, not yet. So I kept digging, found another book, Sartre this time. The guy who said life's what you make it, no gods, no rules, just you and your choices. Sounded empowering at first, like I could shrug off the fear and decide it didn't matter. But the more I read, the emptier it felt. If death's just a blank slate and we're making it all up, then what was she now? A memory I'd invented? A story I told myself to feel better? I wanted to scream. I wanted something solid, something real. My phone lit up. Another work email, another reminder of the grind. But I ignored it. The world out there could wait. This was bigger. Days blurred into weeks, and I was a mess. Couldn't focus at work, couldn't sleep without that ache creeping in. Friends noticed, of course. "You need to get out," they'd say, dragging me to bars or throwing movie nights. I'd smile, nod, play along, but inside I was unraveling. The stress of pretending I was fine, the confusion of not knowing why I wasn't, it was eating me alive. One night, after too many beers and too little sleep, I stumbled home and sat on the floor, staring at nothing. That's when it hit me. I couldn't keep running from this. Not from her death, not from mine, not from the questions tearing me apart. I had to face it, even if it broke me. So I made a choice. Not a big, dramatic one, just a small, quiet step. I turned off the lights, sat cross-legged on the rug and closed my eyes. No plan, no guide, just me in the silence. I'd heard about meditation, people raving about how it calms you down, clears your head, but this wasn't about calm. This was about staring into the void and seeing what stared back. 5 minutes, I told myself. Just 5. My mind raced, her voice, her smile, the hospital room. But I stayed, breathed, in, out. And in that tiny crack of quiet, something shifted. Not an answer, not yet, but a whisper of something deeper. I didn't know it then, but that moment was the start of everything. That first night on the rug wasn't some magical fix. I'd love to tell you I sat there, breathed a few times, and suddenly everything made sense. But that's not how it went. The silence wasn't soft or welcoming. It was heavy, like a thick fog rolling in, pressing against me. My chest tightened as I tried to focus on the air moving in and out. But all I could hear was her voice echoing in my head, her telling me stories as a kid, her humming in the kitchen. I'd lost her, and now I was losing myself in this quiet mess. 5 minutes felt like an eternity, and when I finally opened my eyes, I wasn't calmer. I was rattled. What was I even doing? Was this supposed to help? I stood up, shook it off, and figured maybe I wasn't cut out for this kind of thing. But the next night, I was back. Don't ask me why. Stubbornness, maybe, or just desperation. The world outside kept spinning, emails piling up, friends texting about plans I didn't care about. It was all noise, and I was tired of it. So I sat again. Same spot, same shaky breath. This time I lasted a little longer, maybe 7 minutes. My mind was a storm, tossing up waves of doubt and grief. "She's gone," it screamed. "You're wasting your time." But beneath that chaos, I caught something, a faint rhythm, like the hum of my own pulse. It wasn't much, but it was real. I clung to it, like a lifeline in the dark. And when I got up, I didn't feel fixed, but I didn't feel broken either. Something was shifting, even if I couldn't name it. Days turned into a strange routine. Work was a blur, meetings, deadlines, pretending I had it together. But every night I'd come home and sit. Not because I was good at it, I wasn't. My legs would cramp, my thoughts would race, and half the time I'd end up cursing under my breath. But I kept going. Why? Because the alternative, drowning in that ache, letting the fear of death swallow me whole, felt worse. I started picking up those books again too. Sartre's words about making your own meaning stuck with me, but they still left me cold. If life was just a blank canvas, why did losing her hurt so much? Then I'd flip to the Buddhist stuff, impermanence, letting go, and it stung in a different way. "Nothing lasts," I'd mutter to myself, pacing the room. Great. So what's left? One evening I found a line that stopped me in my tracks. "To understand life, you must understand death." It was so simple, but it hit like a brick. I'd spent weeks running from that thought, burying it under work and beer and fake smiles. But what if facing it was the only way out? I sat down that night with a new kind of focus, not to escape the pain, but to lean into it. I closed my eyes, let the silence wrap around me, and pictured her. Not the hospital bed, not the end, but her laughing, her hands kneading dough in the kitchen. The tears came fast, hot against my cheeks, and I didn't fight them. For once, I just let them be. And in that flood, something cracked open. Not an answer, but a question I hadn't dared ask. What if she's not gone? Not really. I started noticing things after that. The way the air felt cooler when I breathed deep, the way my racing thoughts slowed if I just stayed with them. It wasn't peace, not yet, but it was like clearing dust off an old window. I could see a little more, even if the view was blurry. One night I pushed past 10 minutes, 15 maybe, and my mind wandered to a memory I'd forgotten. Her telling me, "Don't hold on too tight, kid. Things change, but they don't disappear." Back then, I thought she meant toys or summer vacations. Now sitting there in the dark, it felt bigger. What if she was right? What if death didn't erase her? It just changed her, like water turning to mist. I didn't have proof, no glowing signs from the universe, but the idea lodged itself in me, quiet but stubborn. The world outside didn't stop, of course. My inbox overflowed. My boss asked why I seemed off, and I'd shrug it off with a half lie. Just tired. But I wasn't just tired. I was wrestling with something most people don't talk about over coffee. We're all so busy chasing the next paycheck, the next like on Instagram, that we forget to ask, what happens when it's over? I'd been that guy too, hustling, scrolling, pretending the future wasn't creeping closer. Losing her ripped that mask off, and now every night I was peeling back more layers. The silence wasn't fixing me, but it was showing me something I couldn't unsee. By the end of that week, I hit a wall, sat there 20 minutes in, and the grief came roaring back, harder than before. I saw her face, felt her absence like a hole in my chest, and I almost gave up. This is stupid, I thought, fists clenched. What's the point? But then I heard it, not her voice, not some mystical whisper, but my own breath, steady and slow. It pulled me back, like a hand on my shoulder. I stayed, didn't run, and when I opened my eyes, the room was still dark. The ache was still there, but I wasn't afraid of it anymore. Not completely. I didn't know what death was, not yet, but I knew it wasn't the monster I'd made it out to be. That night I went to bed different, not healed, not whole, but cracked open in a way that felt alive. After that night when I didn't run from the ache, something stuck with me. It wasn't like a switch flipped and everything was fine. I still woke up some mornings with that hollow feeling in my gut, still caught myself staring at her old photo on the fridge, wondering where she'd gone. But sitting in the quiet had become less of a fight. I'd come home from work, another day of nodding through meetings, dodging questions about why I seemed so distant, and I'd drop everything. No TV, no phone, just me and that spot on the rug. It was my little rebellion against the chaos out there, the endless grind that kept trying to pull me back. I'd close my eyes, breathe, and let whatever came up wash over me. Some nights it was tears, some nights it was nothing at all, but I was starting to feel like I was digging towards something buried deep. I pushed myself further. 15 minutes stretched into 20, then 30. My friends thought I was losing it. "You're turning into a monk or something." One of them laughed over a beer I barely touched. I smiled, shrugged, didn't bother explaining. How do you tell someone you're sitting in silence chasing a ghost? Not to bring her back, but to understand what she left behind. Work kept piling up, missed deadlines, a passive-aggressive email from my boss. But it didn't matter as much anymore. The stress was still there, clawing at me, but it felt smaller, like a radio I could turn down. I'd sit, focus on my breath, and watch the world fade out. Not disappear, just soften. And in that softening, I started hearing things. Not voices, not some spooky movie moment, but a kind of hum beneath it all. My heartbeat, the creak of the floor, the wind brushing the window. It was ordinary stuff, but it felt alive in a way I'd never noticed. One night I went back to those books, hungry for something to make sense of it. I'd been flipping through the Buddhist pages again, and this time, a line jumped out. "The self is an illusion. What you seek is already here." I sat with that, rolling it around in my head like a stone I couldn't quite grip. An illusion? Me? Her? I'd spent so long thinking of her as gone, separate, lost somewhere I couldn't reach. But what if that was the lie? What if this idea of me and her was just a story I'd built to hold the pain? I closed the book, sat down, and let that thought sink in. 30 minutes, no distractions, just breathing and wondering. My mind fought it, flashed to her hands, folding laundry, her voice calling me for dinner. But I didn't push it away. I stayed with it, let it unravel. That's when it got strange. I'd been sitting there lost in the rhythm of my breath when the room felt bigger. Not like the walls moved, but like the edges of me started to blur. It's hard to explain without sounding crazy, but for a moment, I wasn't just a guy on a rug missing his grandmother. I was the air moving through my lungs, the quiet pressing against my skin, the memory of her laugh all at once. My eyes were closed, but I swear I saw her. Not a vision, not some glowing figure, just a flicker of her smile in my mind, warm and steady. And for the first time, it didn't hurt. It didn't feel like loss. It felt like she was part of it, part of me, part of everything. I didn't jump up or gasp or anything dramatic. I just sat there, tears slipping down my face, and let it be. I don't know how long I stayed like that. 40 minutes, maybe more. When I opened my eyes, the room was the same. Dim light, cluttered desk, the usual mess. But I wasn't. That moment wasn't about finding her in some afterlife or proving anything grand. It was subtler, deeper. I started thinking about what Sartre had said, life's what you make it. But now it clicked differently. What if the meaning isn't something I invent out of thin air? What if it's already here, woven into the fabric of all this? This breath, this quiet, this connection that doesn't die. The Buddhists talked about everything flowing, changing, never really ending. And for once, it didn't sound like a riddle. It sounded like truth. I got up, made a cup of tea, something she used to do for me, and stood by the window, watching the streetlights flicker. The fear I'd carried for months, that choking dread of death, swallowing everything, wasn't gone, but it was quieter. I could still feel the stress of the day, the unanswered emails, the pressure to get back to normal, but it didn't own me. I'd tasted something else, something that didn't fit in a to-do list or a paycheck. It was like I'd brushed up against a secret, not a loud one shouted from rooftops, but a whisper you only hear when you stop talking. I sipped the tea, felt its warmth spread through me, and thought about her. Not as a memory locked in the past, but as a thread still tied to me, shifting, moving, alive in ways I couldn't see. That night, I didn't sleep much, not because I was restless, but because I didn't want to let go of that feeling. I lay there listening to the world settle and realized I wasn't chasing answers anymore. I was starting to live them. The questions about death, about what comes next, didn't vanish. They just didn't scare me the way they used to. I'd stepped into something bigger, something I couldn't name yet, and it was pulling me forward one breath at a time. And came together. I couldn't stop after that night by the window, sipping tea and feeling her woven into the air around me. It wasn't like I'd solved some cosmic puzzle or found a map to the afterlife. I hadn't. But that taste of something bigger, that whisper of connection, it pulled me back to the rug every night like a tide I couldn't resist. Work kept piling up. My boss left a voicemail I didn't return, something about priorities, but it felt distant, like a song playing in another room. The stress, the deadlines, the pressure to snap out of it, they were still there, buzzing like flies, but I'd learned to let them hum without letting them sting. I'd come home, drop my bag, and sit. Not to escape, not anymore, but to dive in. I'd stretch it out now, 30 minutes, 40, sometimes more. My legs would ache, my back would complain, but I didn't care. The silence wasn't just a break from the noise anymore. It was a door, and I was stepping through it. I'd close my eyes, let my breath settle, and wait. Some nights it was just quiet. No big revelations, just the sound of my own lungs doing their job. But other nights it was like the world peeled back, layer by layer, showing me things I didn't know how to say. I'd think about her hands brushing my hair when I was sick, her quiet way of making everything okay. And it didn't cut like it used to. It glowed, soft and steady, like a lantern in the dark. Then came the night that broke me wide open. It wasn't planned, wasn't special, no full moon or dramatic buildup. Just me, the rug, and a tiredness that went deeper than bones. I'd had a rough day, snapped at a coworker, missed a meeting, came home feeling like a failure. The weight of it all, her death, my drifting life, the questions I couldn't answer, pressed down hard. I sat anyway, figuring I'd push through like always. I breathed slow and deep, letting the mess of the day swirl around me. My mind was a riot, her face, the hospital beep, the guilt of not saying goodbye right, and I almost quit. But I stayed, kept breathing, and then out of nowhere, it happened. The edges of me dissolved. That's the only way I can describe it. 1 second, I was a guy sitting there, fighting tears and regrets, and the next I wasn't separate. The room, the air, the hum of the fridge, the memory of her, it all melted together. I didn't see lights or hear angels. It wasn't that kind of thing. It was quieter, heavier, like sinking into a river and realizing you're the water too. Her laugh flickered through me. Not a sound, but a feeling, warm and alive, rippling out into everything. My chest heaved and I let out a sob. Not from pain, but from something so big I couldn't hold it. For the first time since she left, I didn't feel alone. Not because she was out there watching, but because she was here. Part of the breath, the silence, the me that wasn't just me anymore. I don't know how long it lasted. Time didn't work right in that space. When it faded, I was still on the rug, tears soaking my shirt, but I was smiling. It made no sense, but it didn't have to. I'd been so afraid of death taking her, taking me, wiping it all out. But in that moment, I saw it. Nothing ends. Not really. It changes, flows, shifts into something else. Sartre was onto something. We shape what it means, but the Buddhist went deeper. There's no gone, only transformation. She wasn't lost. She was everywhere. In the quiet, in the way my heart kept beating, in the life I was still living. I laughed, a shaky little sound, because the fear that had choked me for months was unraveling, thread by thread. I got up, legs wobbly, and stood there in the dark, feeling the cool floor under my feet. The world hadn't changed. My phone blinked with unread messages. The dishes sat unwashed, but I had. I walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and drank it slow, tasting it like it was the first time. I thought about her, not with that old ache, but with a kind of wonder. What if death isn't a wall we slam into? What if it's just a curtain we step through, still tied to everything we've ever been? I didn't need proof, science or spirits or some holy book. I'd felt it, and that was enough. The next morning I woke up different, not fixed. Grief doesn't vanish like that, but lighter. I went to work, answered that voicemail with a calm I hadn't faked, and when someone asked how I was, I said good and meant it. The stress was still there, the uncertainty of what's next, but it didn't own me. I'd brushed up against something too vast to fear, something that held her, held me, held all of us. I kept sitting every night, not to chase that moment again, but to live in it. The silence wasn't just a tool now, it was a bridge and I was crossing it, one shaky, beautiful step at a time. After that night when everything blurred and came together, I didn't wake up the next day as some enlightened guru. I was still me, same messy apartment, same unanswered emails, same tired eyes staring back in the mirror. But there was a quiet inside me now, not the kind that drowns out the world, but the kind that sits with it. I'd felt her, not as a ghost or a memory locked in time, but as something alive, flowing through me and everything else. It wasn't a fairy tale ending where the pain vanished. It was softer, truer. I still missed her. God, I missed her. But it didn't feel like a hole anymore. It felt like a thread, thin and strong, tying me to something I couldn't lose. I kept sitting every night, not chasing that big moment again. Those don't come on demand, but just being there, in the silence. Some nights I'd light a candle, watch the flame flicker, and think about how it dances without holding still. That's what she was now, I'd tell myself. Not gone, just moving in ways I couldn't pin down. Work didn't magically get easier. My boss still hovered, the deadline still loomed, but I carried it differently. I'd sit through meetings, nod at the right times, and come home without that old knot in my chest. The stress was there, sure, but it didn't own me. I'd breathe through it, 5 minutes here, 10 there, and it was like letting sand slip through my fingers instead of clenching it tight. One afternoon, I found myself at the park near my place. It wasn't planned, just grabbed a coffee and wandered out. Something I hadn't done in months. The air was crisp, the kind she'd have loved, and I sat on a bench, watching kids chase each other, leaves drifting down slow and gold. I closed my eyes not to meditate, just to feel it. The wind, the laughter, the hum of life doing its thing. And there she was again. Not a vision, not a voice, but a warmth spreading through me, like she was sitting right there, nudging me to look up and smile. I did. I smiled at nothing and everything, and for once, I didn't care if anyone saw. That's when I knew. This wasn't about solving death. It was about living with it, through it, beyond it. I started talking to people again, not the forced small talk I'd faked for weeks, but real stuff. A friend asked me over dinner how I was holding up, and instead of brushing it off, I said, "I'm figuring it out. It's not what I thought." He didn't push, just nodded, and we sat there eating takeout, the kind she'd have teased me for ordering. Life kept moving, bills, laundry, the usual, but it felt lighter, like I'd let go of a weight I didn't know I was carrying. I'd catch myself humming her old songs while I washed dishes, and it didn't sting. It felt like she was humming along, somewhere in the rhythm of it all. Here's the thing. I don't have a neat answer for you. No golden ticket to what's next, no proof scribbled in a notebook. What I've got is this, a feeling, a shift, a truth I stumbled into when I stopped running. Death isn't the end because nothing ends, not really. It's not about heaven or hell or some cosmic scoreboard. It's about flow, her, me, you, all of us, moving through this big, wild thing called existence. I found that in the silence, not because it shouted at me, but because it let me listen. And you can too. You don't need to be a philosopher or a monk. Just sit, 5 minutes, wherever you are. Breathe. Let the noise come and go. You might not see what I saw, but you'll find something that's yours. I still think about her every day. Sometimes it's a pang, passing her favorite bakery, hearing a song she loved. But it's not the same. It's not a wound. It's a reminder. She's not lost. She's here, in the way I laugh a little easier, in the way I don't panic when the future feels shaky. The world's still a mess. My inbox proves it. But I'm not afraid of it anymore. Not the way I was. I've got this quiet now. This space where the big questions don't need answers, just room to breathe. It's not about forgetting the stress or the grief. It's about holding them loose, letting them pass like clouds instead of storms. So if you're out there, feeling lost or stressed or wondering what it all means, try this. Find a corner, any corner, and sit with yourself. 5 minutes, no rules, no pressure, just you and your breath. It won't fix everything. I'm not selling you a miracle, but it might show you something. It did for me. It showed me she's not gone, and neither am I, not yet. We're still here, still flowing, still tied together in ways I'll never fully grasp. And that's enough. That's more than enough. I'll keep sitting, keep listening, keep living with her in the quiet. Not because I have to, but because I want to. Because this, whatever this is, it's worth it. And maybe, just maybe, it's worth it for you too. You have listened to the video up to this point, which means you have received a lucky gift from an angel. Click subscribe today to not miss the inspiring stories and secrets that will transform you forever.